The state of the NFL. What do I mean when I talk about that? It's basically where you are right now. What's the NFL positioned as? I think it's the number one sport in all of America. It rivals soccer, which is the number one sport internationally, which a lot of you know. But I think the NFL is a conglomerate. I think the NFL is a phenomenal business and a phenomenal sport. It's premier programming. It's everything wrapped into one. So I do want some things that I want to talk about, and I want to go over them in terms of the state of the game right now. And the first thing I want to talk about are coaches in the cap. And you see Sean McVay right there. What do I mean by coaches in the cap? I think as an NFL franchise, you've got to nail these two things in order to be successful. You've got to nail the head coach, and you've got to nail the cap, being the salary cap, and have an opportunity to understand how it works. So the top tier coaches in the NFL make anywhere between $12 to $20 million a year, and new head coaches and those that are not considered top tier make about 3 to 5. I have no problem with that. I think the best head coaches should get paid more because when you have a phenomenal head coach, he has an idea of how an organization is supposed to run. He has an idea of the fingerprint that he needs to put on an organization. He has an idea of whom needs to be scouted, of whom needs to be brought in personnel-wise, who needs to be let go, whether or not we need to extend players. They work directly with the GM. This is why it's so important for a head coach and a GM to have a great relationship. Doesn't mean they need to be brought in at the same time. I've talked about that before. But it means that they need to be on the same page. But also the salary cap. Now, you know this, and I'm about to tell you for most people, and if you don't, here it is. The salary cap for players is based on whatever the league's revenue is. So, player salaries come from revenue. They come from merch. It comes from revenue sharing. It comes from TV deals. All these different outlets and all these billions that the NFL makes is where player salaries come from, which make up the salary cap based on the CBA or the collective bargaining agreement. But, coaches aren't under CBA rules. Head coaches are considered management. Head coaches are generally fully guaranteed in their contracts. But I wonder what the NFL would look like if coaching salaries were also a part of the cap. Because, see, what happens is generally coaches are let go without cause. That's right. When they get fired because they're not winning enough, that's typically not considered cause. But owners are private individuals that own private entities, a.k.a. NFL teams, everybody except the Packers, and they can make the decisions that they want. I just always ask myself, man, what if the salary cap also had coaches' salaries involved? Would these give coaches more of an opportunity to not be fired after 2 or 3 years? Because with the salary cap, remember, you have to be able to adjust for quote-unquote inflation, even in the NFL. You've got to be able to make sure that you're spending the right amount of money, and you got to make sure that you're spending money on the right people. Because if not only are you paying for it by being penalized, whether it's a luxury tax or whether you're getting draft picks taken away or what have you because you're not staying under the cap, whatever the issue may be, coaches don't have anything to do with it. And coaches are the head of the organization. So I'm not sitting here banging the table for that to be included in the new CBA at any point in time. It's just always something I've wondered because teams are able to do whatever they want to with coaches, fire them after a year or two, and even though they still have to pay their salary, that's not something on the balance sheet when it comes to the salary cap. And I think teams would have to be more inclined to be a little bit better in how they're choosing their head coaches as well as the way they choose their players if coaches had anything to do with the salary cap. But just understanding this in the state of the NFL, if you have a very good head coach and a very good understanding of the salary cap, you're probably winning a lot of football games and you're probably increasing the net worth of your organization, which is twofold for these owners, and that's exactly what they want. Secondly, I want to talk about defensive penalties. And the reason I want to talk about that is because before I even did any research, and as I was thinking about this, I said, you know what? I guarantee you that defensive penalties have increased over the past 2 to 3 years. And I was wrong. They've actually gone down. From 2022 to 2024, you've seen them go from 168 to 138. So there have been less defensive penalties enacted, but what I know for certain is the impact of those defensive penalties has been huge, and I'm going to tell you how. Do you know that the Chicago Bears have benefited the most in 2025 from illegal contact? And if you don't know what that is, illegal contact is simply when a defensive player, typically a linebacker or a defensive back, hits a receiver or an eligible receiver more than 5 yards down the field. And it can be subtle, but if the official thinks that it's causing any harm to the route running capabilities and the ability for a receiver to get open, they're going to throw the flag. It's a 5-yard penalty. Why it's so huge is because it's an automatic first down. Do you know that the teams that benefited the most, the Bears benefited the most from illegal contact, but there were 3 other teams that benefited most in 2025 from getting first downs via defensive penalties, and they were the Broncos, the Jaguars, and the Eagles to go along with the Bears. What do all 4 of those teams have in common? They all won their individual division. I'm just telling you, man. I'm not saying that that's why they won the division. I think these were all good football teams. But when you give good football teams extra possessions, it's just that much tougher for their opponent. So I don't think it's a coincidence that these four teams were benefited the most in terms of the defensive penalties that led to automatic first downs and also won a division in a league where teams are better, when divisions are tougher, and where it's going to take a little bit more for you to get over the top. So these defensive penalties may have gone down, but the impact certainly has not. And the last thing I want to talk about regarding the state of the NFL right now is the philosophy of quarterbacks. I'm just shaking my head, man, because, I actually was speaking with some national radio host via me calling and talking to them a few weeks ago, and I said one thing about philosophies of the quarterback. I said, you've got to prepare for the baby before the baby gets there. When my wife and I had children, we didn't prepare for the kids after they got there. We had to have the room ready. We had to have the crib ready. We had to have the clothes ready, because that's how you build a solid foundation for any child. It's the same thing for an NFL franchise. If you're a bad NFL franchise, you typically have the opportunity to draft first or second or third. And typically people who are bad don't have a quarterback that they feel is good enough to get them to the next level. So what they'll do is, on a bad team, they'll draft a quarterback and expect him to be the savior and to change the franchise. And if you go back and look at the numbers about how many current players have won the Super Bowl with the teams that drafted them, it's very, very few, especially over the last quarter of a century. And why is that? Because most teams aren't ready for the baby before it gets there. So when I look at a team like Seattle, who didn't pay their quarterback top-tier quarterback money, even though he's getting $30 million a year, that's not top-tier quarterback money, but they paid everybody else around him. But when I look at the Rams, they gave up the farm to get Matthew Stafford and won a Super Bowl as well. So there are different philosophies, but you have to understand that a philosophy of paying your quarterback a whole bunch of money, he better be a dog and he better be able to get it done and uplift individuals who don't get it done. If you have a quarterback that you consider to be good and you're paying him good, not great money, you better have a cast around him. If you do it out of order, it's not going to work out. And I think so many teams fail, not because they don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback, but because they have a quarterback who may be Hall of Fame or not, but they don't know how to build around him. And it's the philosophy that's flawed. So until they get that right, they're going to be where they are, continuously drafting early on in the NFL draft.